Welcome to digital learning. All right, guys, so you should have opened up your copy of House of the Scorpion, whether it is in a book form because you had pre-bought it or you are looking at the online version. We are at old age. Again, remember us talking in class, could you imagine the age you're at right now that you are considered to be old age? So who knew that was a possibility? So let's go ahead and let's move into chapter 15 and get it to work. All right. This chapter is called Starved Bird, and so let's get reading. The days passed with unvarying sameness. Now Matt could no longer look forward to Maria's visits. Both she and Amelia had been sent to a convent to turn them into proper young ladies. Maria's the one they're trying to tame, Celia said. Amelia is about as wild as a bowl of oatmeal. Matt asked Celia to send Maria a letter, but she refused. The nuns would only hand it over to Senator Mendoza, she said. Now, does anyone know what a convent is? We don't hear about them as much now, but years ago, a convent was where nuns lived, and they would send children who needed to be taught how to be a proper young lady, and they would give them classes and expect them to change them. Now, knowing what you know about Maria, do you think they're really going to change her? Just a food for thought. Back to our reading. Matt tried to imagine what she was doing, but he knew nothing about convents. Did she miss him? Had she forgiven him? Was she visiting Tom instead? With Maria and Amelia gone, Benito and Stephen went elsewhere for their vacations. Mr. Alarcon was away on frequent business trips, and Felicia and El Viejo stayed in their rooms. The halls and gardens were deserted. The servants still went about their duties, but their voices were muted. The house was like a stage with all the actors missing. One day, Matt ordered a safe house from the stables and waited tensely to see whether the request would be denied. It wasn't, and an Egypt brought out the animal. Matt, uncomfortable, cast his eyes down. Few Egypts worked in the house, and he preferred not to think about them. He reached up for the reins and glanced up. It was Rosa. Okay, this is the part of the story where it would go dun dun dun, because have we even seen or heard about Rosa since the night that El Patron saved Matt? You're right, we haven't. So it's very interesting to see that, this is where she's at. This is what happened to her. All right, let's see if I can get my computer back right. Sorry, guys. All right, Matt felt that old thrill of terror as though he were still a small boy and she was his jailer. But this woman posed no threat at all. The hard, bitter lines of her face seemed unconnected with anything going on inside. Rosa gazed straight ahead with her hand outstretched. It was unclear whether she even saw him. "Rosa?" Matt said. She looked at him. "Do you wish another horse, master?" The voice was the same, but the old anger was gone. "No, this one is fine," he said. And Rosa turned and shuffled back into the stables. Her movements were jerky compared to what he remembered. Matt rode away from the horse. Starting that paragraph over. Matt rode away from the house. The horse walked steadily. It would move into a straight line until Matt told it to go left or right, and it wouldn't pass the boundary implanted in its brain. Like Rosa, Matt thought. And for the first time he realized what a terrible thing it was to be in Egypt. He hadn't known any of the others before their operation. They were simply there doing boring jobs, but Rosa had been a real, though cruel and violent person. Now she was merely a shadow with the life sucked out of her. Do you feel sorry for Rosa? I'm not sure that I do, because we know she had to have known what an Egypt was, and to know that if she crossed El Patron, that she would have to be, something would happen to her. And so you make that decision. Do you feel sorry for her? They were simply, he hadn't known from any others from before the operation. They were simply there to do boring jobs. But Rosa had been real, though cruel and violent person. Now she was merely a shadow with the life sucked out of her. On an impulse, he turned the animal west rather than east and skirted the poppy fields to where he thought Celia's little house lay. He shaded his eyes to make out its shape. This part of the farm was an early stage in the growing cycle. The plants were hardly more than a gray-green shadow, and a gentle mist wafted up from the sprinklers in the ground. The air was sharp with the smell of wet dust. A few Eejits bent over the earth, tweezing up weeds and squishing bugs. This was their country, the country of the Eejits. Matt wondered what would happen if they suddenly woke up. Would they turn on him like the villagers in the movie about Frankenstein? But they wouldn't wake up. They couldn't. They'd go on weeding until the foreman told them to stop. Matt couldn't find the little house. It must have been torn down when he and Celia moved. Sighing, he turned east toward the oasis in the mountains. Now remember this is his first time going to the oasis without who? You are absolutely correct. Tam Lin. When he got to the water trough, Matt alit and filled it from the pump as Tam Lin had always done. Drink, he told the horse. Obediently, it slurped until Matt decided it had had enough. Stop, he said. He led it to the shade and told it to wait. He felt a whisper of fear as he walked into the mountains. This time he was alone. This time no one would come to his aid, and if he fell off a rock or he was bitten by a rattlesnake, he got to the hole in the rock and climbed through. The pool was low since it was the end of the dry season and thunderstorms of August and September were yet to come. The branches of a creosote bush trembled on the other side of some animal slunk into hiding. Wind whistled through the bare rocks with lonely, keening sound. Matt sat down and took out a sandwich. He didn't know what he was doing here. At the upper end of the little valley was the grapevine sprawled over its man-made arbor. Someone had lived here long ago, and the vine had grown so heavy part of the arbor had collapsed. Matt walked carefully into the shade. Matt walked carefully into the shade, keeping his eye peeled for snakes that also liked the cool dark. He saw a large metal chest on the ground. On one side was a roll of blankets and a cache of water bottles. Matt halted. His heart started to gallop. He glanced around to see where the intruder was hiding. There was nothing except the keening wind and the rasping call of the cactus wren somewhere in the rocks. Matt retreated into the cover of the creosote bush. The oily leaves broke against his skin and released a pungent smell. Who had dared to invade his space? Was it an illegal trying to reach the United States, or had one of the Eejits woken up? Do you think the Eejits would wake up? As Matt considered the possibility, he realized that no illegal could have hauled a metal chest through the dry hills and canyons Celia had described, and no Eejit ever woke up. Heart thumping, Matt ventured from his hiding place and examined the chest. It was secured by two metal clips. Carefully, he hid the clasp, and I lifted the lid. On a neatly packaged parcel was a note. Dear Matt, it began. Matt sat back in the dirt and breathed deeply into his contain his shock. This stuff was for him. When he calmed down, he looked up at the note again. Now think about that. Whoever planted this really, planned it for Matt. So obviously they knew that he would eventually come here. Okay. Dear Matt. Anyone notice dear? Who do you think it's from? Who couldn't spell? Yep, definitely Tam Lin. I'm a lousy writer, so this won't be long. El Patron says I have to go with him. I can't do anything about it. I put supplies in this chest, plus books. You never know when you might need them. Your friend, Tam Lin. Wow. Did Tam Lin want to go? It made it seem like, he kind of wanted to when Matt was, he thought that Matt had killed the dog, but how sweet that he, got him a supply chest together. All right, so we're right here with this chapter, or this paragraph. It was written in a large childish scrawl. It surprised Matt to see how poor the man's writing was when his speech was so intelligent. Tam Lin had said he'd never been educated, and here was proof of it. Matt eagerly unpacked the chest. He found beef jerky, rice, beans, dried onions, coffee, and candy. He found a bottle of water purification pills, a first aid kit, a pocket knife, matches, and lighter fluid. Pots in blankets, said another note halfway down. Matt immediately unwrapped the blankets and found a nest of cooking utensils and a metal mug. Huh, it's really interesting. What do you think all of these supplies are for? You need to keep thinking about that. At the bottom of the chest were books. On one had fold-out maps and another was titled A History of Opium. Two more were manuals of camping and survival. A note at the very bottom read, Keep chest closed. Coyotes eat foods. Books 2. Matt sat back and admired the treasures. Tam Lin hadn't deserted him after all. He read and reread the last words of the note, and it was like drinking many cups of fresh, cool water. Your friend, Tam Lin. Then Matt packed everything up, stowed the chest in the shadows, and made his way back home. The house was in turmoil when he got there. Hovercrafts landed, servants ran to and fro. Matt found Celia waiting anxiously inside the apartment. Where have you been, Mavita? She cried. I was about to send out a search party. I've laid your suit on the bed. What happened? Why is everyone running around? No one told you? And she distractedly pulled off his shirt and thrust a towel at him. Take a quick shower before you get dressed. El Viejo is dead. Celia hastily crossed herself and left. Matt stared at the towel as he collected his thoughts. The old man's death wasn't a surprise. He hadn't emerged from his room in months, and he clearly had been very sick. Matt tried to feel sorry for him, but he hardly knew the man. Matt showered and dressed as rapidly as possible. I didn't tell you to wash your hair, she said when she saw him. She combed it down frequently. She was wearing a fine black dress with jet beads sewn on the front, and Matt thought she looked strange without her apron. El Patron insists on us being present, she said as they hurried through the halls. They came out the salon. The statues had been replaced by pots of flowers. Black crepes hung in swags around the walls, and hundreds of holy candles glittered in the rack at one end of the room. The smoke and pail of incense made Matt break into a coughing fit. Everyone, and there was at least 50 people there, turned to frown at him. Celia handed him the inhaler, as she always had. Presently Matt's wheezing subsided and he was able to look around the room. In the center was an elegantly carved coffin with brass handles. Inside, looking more like a starved bird than anything else, was El Viejo. He was dressed in a black suit and his sharp nose stuck up like a beak against the ivory silk lining. Now that is a great paragraph because it gives us a good visualization of, how El Viejo truly believed it was his time to go. It was going to be his time to go. And so he did not approve of his great-grandfather's, envision that to continue to make your life better, by getting surgical means and things like that. So this is a great paragraph. That's the end of this video. So part 2 will be the next link.